Wonderful. Okay, so let's start. We're going to talk about psychedelics. And before we get into psychedelics and how they can help us develop our leadership, it would be nice to get to know a little bit about the Evolute Institute and its two founders, Christopher and Dmitrij, who we have with us today. So how would you guys like to start telling us who you are?
Demi, you go ahead.
Well, traditionally, Christopher always decides that I shall start, breaking the ice. So I will do here as well. So hi everyone. I'm very glad to meet you all. Thank you for coming. My name is Dmitrij, and together with Christopher, we co-founded the Evolute Institute that we've been working on for almost 3 years. If you had asked me 5 years ago, what would I be doing professionally? And you tell me I'd be doing something with psychedelics, I would have probably considered you as a bit of crazy. So as you can see, it has led me really into pathways that I didn't expect at all. And how I actually got involved in psychedelic work was, you can guess, through my own psychedelic experience, which was roughly 5 years ago in Brazil, where I unexpectedly stumbled into a psychedelic ceremony without any expectations, actually more so with a sense of incredibility and skepticism. And during that,
how does one stumble upon a psychedelic ceremony in the middle of Brazil? How does that exactly happen?
Well, I was spending there 6 weeks actually to help a friend develop his own startup, and there I was invited by a group of friends to join them for a ceremony, and I haven't had any experience with any kind of psychedelics or drugs before that. I considered myself a science-based kind of data evidence-loving person, so I thought.
Yeah, what's your training, Dmitrij? What have you studied in university?
Yeah, I come from a health services research background, so I did my PhD in evaluating different healthcare interventions. Worked a lot with data and with a lot of statistics. So this was kind of the mindset and the vision I had of life and of kind of what I can trust and what not. And so the psychedelic experience for me was really like an eye-opening event on many levels. On the one side, really, it revealed many aspects to me that I thought I was over and through them long ago, since I was kind of a functional, productive member of society. But I think I had managed to suppress a lot of inner parts very, very well. And on the other hand, I would say it was my first experience that was literally trans-rational, something that I could not grasp any longer intellectually. And I understood that maybe my view of life was maybe too narrow. And so this led me on a path of exploration and really experimentation with different techniques and modalities of how altered states of consciousness can help in healing my own wounds and working on my own personal development. And over time, I met Christopher, and we thought, how can we actually bring this kind of work to people who come from the business world, who traditionally wouldn't consider psychedelics or inner work that is assisted with psychedelics as something, as their first choice.
And how did you two meet? Was it taking psychedelics together?
So Christopher, I'll pass the ball to you, and you can take that.
No, we were introduced by an acquaintance who knew that I was looking into this opportunity of creating leadership experience retreats. And when Dmitrij spoke with him, he said like, there's someone else who talked to me about this idea recently. You should talk to Christopher. And that's how we were introduced, and we hit it off pretty quickly. And it was in one of the first Corona winter, I think. And so the only thing you were allowed to do was to go on walks outside. You were not allowed to meet somewhere, right? Like inside or stay somewhere. You were just allowed to go outside and walk, 2 people max. And so we did that for many hours. And that's how it started.
Great. So this was in Berlin, because in Spain we couldn't walk out anywhere unless we were doing the shopping or walking our dogs.
Yes.
But in Brussels, I
I-
hear you could walk as long as you didn't sit on any benches. You couldn't sit on a bench, but you could walk outside. Was this Berlin as well?
You couldn't sit on a bench, exactly. I have friends who were chased from benches, being alone, totally alone in a park on a bench, but being chased away. Yes, it was similar.
And when you guys met and started having these discussions, had you ever taken psychedelics, Christopher?
At the time we met, yes. That's why I was also looking into this opportunity to bring this kind of work to the organizational world, to the business world.
And where was your
my-
first experience? How did that happen?
That was a bit more planned than Dmitrij's experience. A friend had told us about an ayahuasca experience he had, and it sounded really quite interesting. But I was a bit skeptical because I thought, like, my head is my work instrument. I don't want to ruin my mind, my brain. So before I do anything like that, I have to do my research. So I read, for example, Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I don't know if some of you know it or have read it or so. Yeah. And that reassured me that actually you can't break much when you kind of screen for certain conditions, of course. So there are certain conditions that you need to be screened for, but otherwise it's remarkably safe. Then it was okay. So then it was about, okay, how can I find like a good provider and so on. And in the end, I ended up in a psilocybin, or let's say a truffle retreat. So it's magic mushrooms, but the active ingredient is psilocybin. So in a psilocybin truffle retreat in the Netherlands. That was my first experience in 2018. And I was 38 at the time, and also I was not into drugs at all or substances. And it was a very deep and broad experience. And when I got out of this, I was like, okay, how would the world look like if more people had the chance to make this experience in the right set and setting? Because I don't know, we can talk about it later, but there are also the wrong settings. And what would the potential be? And so that kind of was the founding impulse.
Okay, and so how did the first program come together? And the Evolute Institute, you guys, how did you get from walking in Berlin and not sitting on any benches to, okay, let's do this, let's take a group of people and give them psychedelics?
Okay, I give back to Dimi so you can speak as well.
I was going to say, I always get the dates wrong when we founded the company, so I'd better give it to you. But essentially, we've been working for over 1.5 years on the conception, on the program, right? Because for us, it was not merely about, well, giving people a space where they can consume psilocybin truffles, but actually, how can we frame the work so that it becomes a space where people can go for a safe and really deep self-exploration, and when they emerge again from that experience, where they can actually take these insights and translate them to their life, and especially also how can they translate these insights to their professional lives, right? Because most retreats so far that have existed, they stopped at the personal level, right? So we can go through certain personal topics, certain relationships in our childhood or adulthood. But what does it mean in my vision as somebody who wants to make a contribution also to the wider society, to the world, right? So how can I have a clearer vision about my gift to the world? And so this is how we wanted the work to be framed. And so we started sketching the program, etc., and then really pretty pragmatically assembling the first group and telling entrepreneurs, people also from the corporate world, people who are in the transformative business themselves, or coaches and trainers, if they were interested in such an experience. And this is how then at some point we had our first program, and it was I think in terms of feedback, very, very resounding. That's great work, and that gave us reasons to continue.
Let me add that you were skipping a few steps. We also had to assemble a team of facilitators for doing the work. Like we have a medical doctor, psychologists that have the appropriate training for this kind of work. and other facilitators, so the team, and of course find an appropriate location, and of course design their curriculum, which is like the whole prep work and the integration work. So yeah, and then our program, for example, is not just like one night or so, right? Like sometimes when you go to an ayahuasca experience in Brazil, it's basically just one night. So you come, you check in, you have the experience, and then next morning, bye-bye, have a good life. And also, I think Dibi's experience was in that direction, which was a bit difficult. So we really try to also learn from other ways of doing it, and also not so good ways of doing it. And so our like main program, the kind of more leadership-oriented program, is a 3-month program, hybrid. So of course, in the center is like a retreat experience, like 4 days, but there's like 3 weeks of prep and 2 months of integrations with numerous like group sessions and one-on-one sessions, like one-on-one coaching sessions virtually, to really have like a very customized journey. It's also kind of comes from our own experiences and what not to do and what could be improved.
Yeah, it's interesting when you mentioned Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. You know, there's a documentary on Netflix based on that book by Michael Pollan as well.
Yes.
And in fact, they do not cover professional endeavors assisted by psychedelics. It's true what Dmitrij is saying, that they only talk about therapy for people who are going to die, or people who have addictions, or people who have even the research news that I posted today from the microdose, this grant that Europe is going to donate 6.5 million euros to do research on the effect of psilocybin on 4 progressive illnesses. Yeah, so there's still the large part of the literature and focus on psychedelics is not covering a business owner or an entrepreneur or an executive who wants to advance, improve his creativity, overcome fatigue or demotivation at work, or, you know, I've lost my spark. I started a business 10 years ago and I'm not sure why I'm doing this anymore. And so that's where your approach is more relevant to all the people who are here listening to us today than maybe the approaches that are being talked about more in the media. Yeah. Also very interesting is the importance of designing a curriculum where people have a number of online sessions to prepare them for the journey. Yeah. And then a few sessions afterwards to integrate all of the learnings and the knowledge and the insights that they get during their journey, how to bring those back into your daily life. Yeah, because that is one of the big difficulties of an ayahuasca retreat and I've had several clients come back to me after doing psychedelics with their pupils dilated like that and their hair practically on edge, trying to make sense of their lives and really kind of drowning with all of the intensity of emotion that had come out of that experience. No? So it sounds like you really did the research and tried to put together a program that takes care of all of those risks, let's say, or the loose threads that can come out of it. And tell us a little bit about what psychedelics are and why they induce a special effect that we should be curious about or try to find out more about.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can ask the group also what kind of they think psychedelics are, because I would be interested if someone has like a definition for us or so, and then we can build on that maybe.
Sure, go ahead. We're a small group. Anybody who wants to talk about what they know, you can open your mic and participate.
Everyone is shy. Yeah, it seems like people are shy.
Well, they're shy. That's fine. That's fine. And they prefer to listen to us talk. That's fine.
Okay, it's all good. So
I think Ali wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
My idea, but I would say they are substances, and they give you like these mind-altering experiences. So you experience different states of consciousness with them, and I also heard like it's mind-revealing. So it like kind of shows you what is already in your mind, but more like intense.
Yes.
Ali, I'm curious, have you tried psychedelics before?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, great. There is a lot of psychedelic activity going on in the Balear Islands, in Ibiza and in Mallorca. There's a lot of Europeans who are doing like profound inner soul searching in the Balear Islands. And I know because I have clients and friends who are doing stuff with psychedelics there, even though it's not exactly legal in Spain yet. It's just happening kind of off the books, let's say.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to us, it was always very important to do it kind of in a legal framework. And so that's why we do it in the Netherlands as well, where you can legally purchase and consume the psilocybin-containing truffles. And
We have Fran wanted to add something to this, Christopher. Fran, yes, go ahead.
Yes, hello to everyone, Pino. It's great to see you. And it's a great subject. I personally have not tried it, as you know, because I've told you through WhatsApp, but I do follow a website called the Microdose. And one of the things that I see or read more than see, because I read them, is they talk about all these psychedelics, including the Cactus San Pedro and the rest. But they are saying what I heard from you, Pino, that you have tried it. There's the two speakers that you have tried it, and it's a great experience. But what I'm reading everywhere that is kind of intellectually worthwhile reading, they're saying watch out, because it's not really that of a good path. And that's what I wanted to ask you, because the microdose is I don't know if you know, it's a blog or a website where they're talking about all these types of psychedelics, but most of them at the end say no medical evidence. This is too early to make such a cause effect on how good it is to make you answer the questions that you were saying, Pino, about should I do my business, or Isabel Allende write her next book? She's going to find through the ayahuasca treatment, which she says she does. So that is what worries me a little bit.
That's a great question, Fran.
yes. So maybe let's speak to this. I would just, before I hand over to Dimi for answering more comprehensively, just say quite literally, psychedelics means mind revealing, as you said, or you could also say soul revealing, because the old Greeks, when they said psyche, they were not thinking just about the mind as something that's in the head. Psyche was more like something that involves the whole body. So you could understand it more like as soul revealing as well. I'm half Greek, so that's why I always have to bring in the Greek etymology. Forgive me for this. And yeah, now I hand over to Dimi for answering really more seriously.
Well, so I guess there were different questions posed, one by Pino. What do psychedelics actually do in the brain? And then also, well, a point raised by Fran. Well, how much evidence does there actually exist, and how firm is it, and to what degree can we rely on that? So we can have longer lectures about how psychedelics work in the brain, and what consciousness is, what the mind is, and what happens under altered states of consciousness with psychedelics. We do that during our courses, but maybe to give you just a very, very brief overview. So basically, a certain class of psychedelics, such as LSD or psilocybin mushrooms, but also psilocybin truffles, and also ayahuasca, they are so-called serotonergic substances. That means that they act on your brain's serotonin system. And in a very, very kind of simple way of thinking about it is that certain cells in your brain have receptors that can be activated by serotonin. And once these receptors are activated, they set off a cascade of signaling. And so these psychedelics, they do cause an activation of these serotonin receptors. And that has some very interesting effects. So certain parts of our brain are tuned down. And it is currently hypothesized that one part of the brain that is tuned down is called the default mode network. And some researchers describe it something like the gravity of our self. So our conception of who we think we are, of our weaknesses and strengths, and to what degree we are lovable, and everything that kind of relates around the ego, the self, is instantiated in that brain region. And during psychedelics, this region is basically something like rebooted or turned off temporarily, and that really allows people to make new experiences and re-evaluations of the way they perceive themselves, of the way they relate to others, to themselves, to the world in general, right? So when people talk about ego death, so to speak, when they say, I dissolved into something greater and I kind of could lay aside my sense of self and take on something new, it is hypothesized that correlates with the default mode network in the brain being turned off and then being turned on again. So if you imagine like a ski piste, right? You will see that at some point there will be path dependencies, because skiers will take again and again the same slopes, and at some point you will have these deeper trails, and it's very hard to get out of them. So that is kind of a metaphor for sometimes the way our thinking can be stuck, right? So and in the worst case, when this rigidity of thinking gets pathological, then at some point we speak about mental diseases like depression or anxiety, right? Where we can't get out of our habitual ways of thinking and perceiving and feeling. And so what a psychedelic session metaphorically does, it shakes the snow globe.
It brings the snow plow in.
Exactly, it brings the snow plow in. So these path dependencies, they're flattened out, and then we can take new routes, right? Going down the slope. And so this basically opens a window of neuroplasticity for us, where we can redefine critical things, right? And there have been many papers showing how brain plasticity is affected, how concepts like critical period for learnings are opened again. So things that we thought are ended with adolescence, when we are like 18, 19, things where we thought this will never change again in an adult's life, somehow again become an object for remodeling. So this is, in a very kind of simplified way, what happens in the brain, or at least one Western hypothesis of understanding of how it works in the brain.
Yeah,
Maybe Chris.
Sorry, Christopher. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add, like, and maybe, there has been lots of research actually on LSD when it was synthesized, after it has been first synthesized in the 1940s, so in the 50s and 60s, until it was forbidden, the research. There has been lots of research on this, and the psychedelic research renaissance that has been happening in the past 20 years has been done a lot with psilocybin, actually. So these are quite well-studied substances, you wouldn't think, but it's actually, there's quite solid evidence that they're really safe. And I would say the fact that it works on the serotonin system in the brain, not the dopamine system, explains also why those substances don't make you addicted. So they're not addictive drugs. Like when we think about drugs, usually we think maybe drugs of abuse, but those are substances that make you addicted and that are toxic. But psychedelics as a class of substances is neither toxic for the liver or for the nervous system, unlike alcohol, a very common and very legal drug. And they don't make you addicted, unlike nicotine and cocaine and so on, right? Who work more on other systems in the brain. So from that point of view, they're remarkably safe unless there's certain preconditions, contraindications. And then it's just a question of what kind of experience do you have mentally or psychologically? And there, of course, it depends a lot on the preparation, the setting, and the integration, as you already pointed out. So, and I would say it's like Stan Groff, who's one of the key researchers in that field, he said like psychedelics are like unspecific amplifiers. So you can imagine
unspecific. Can you say that again? Unspecific
amplifiers of the human psyche. So in a way, they are magnifying glass, and you can really zoom in, or it's being zoomed in. And so you can imagine, like, if you were to be very afraid, because you're running around in the street and you have taken something and don't even know what you have taken, then of course you will have a very bad time, because you're like, don't know what's happening, and you're afraid, and then you get more afraid, and so on. This doesn't happen in like a well created safe spaces, like in good retreat settings that are well facilitated, right? But in theory, of course, you could then have like a bad experience. And of course, Dimi can also share.
Yeah, so basically, to sum up a little bit what we're talking about here, and the way, I don't know the scientific explanation that Dmitrij was telling us about the effect on serotonin, but it is true, my observation of clients who go through these programs is that it turns, the psychedelic turns off the control that the mind is applying on the unconscious part. And so it's like you open Pandora's box and let that wild unconscious part of you come out for a while, and you kind of see a number of things, and then it's turned back on after the psychedelic is over, no? So it's like what Dmitrij was talking about. We're, as adults, we're always working and thinking inside a box that is created in our mind by all of those neural pathways that we've been going over and over for the last 10, 20, 30 years. And for a little while, we get to come out of that box. And coming back to Fran's question, there are risks in coming out of the box, because the box is there to keep us safe from the parts of ourselves that we don't know how to manage. And so that is why there are so many warnings and so much fear, which is why it was forbidden, right? In the 60s and 70s, there was fear that this would make us go run wild, etc. But just to speak to your question, Fran, I don't think there's a crystal ball in this, and I'm sure Christopher and Dmitrij can tell us the same thing. It's like when somebody comes to do coaching, nobody can tell you what the future is going to look like, and it's not a vision of your future, but it does allow you to see aspects of your reality that might help you respond to questions. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you design your programs to help people have a good experience, or how to make sure their bad experience isn't too bad.
Demi, you wanna?
Yeah, actually, I actually wanted still to address Fran's questions, but maybe Fran, maybe we can do that also later. And first, talk about the experience and how we want to, or what we do to maximize the likelihood of people having a beneficial and meaningful trip. So I think it starts with the entire setup, right? It's not about eating mushrooms, having an experience and leaving, but actually going through the journey with an intention and viewing it as an opportunity for inner growth and exploration. And that also informs the choices of the instruments that we have. So for instance, we have preparation sessions where we talk to people about what is their intention, right? What is it that they want to explore? Because an intention can serve something as like a compass in this very vast space that psychedelics might open to us into the unconscious. An intention might be something like an anchor that helps us potentially focus on a certain
Give us an example of an intention.
Yeah, I mean, intention is really very.
I want to look at my marriage.
Yeah, I think often these intentions, they revolve around archetypal topics, or about how I relate to power, or there is a sense of deep, I don't know, dissatisfaction in my life or something. How can I feel more connected to myself and to people, because I feel I got a bit alienated from my life. I've been doing things on automation mode, but somehow there's a lack of vitality. Or some people just really have a more open intention, say, I'm actually just curious, I want to explore, right? Chris, yeah, I'm sure you have other.
Yeah, I mean, we have also more business related question, of course, because Evolute, like we have two programs. The Evolute program is more like has this leadership business angle. And there it's, for example, like how I relate to my sense of responsibility and how do I balance my responsibility as a CEO, for example, with my need for self-care. And that might even not be formulated like this when they come in. It's kind of what kind of we kind of get out in the coaching process. Okay, so there's an internal struggle between responsibility and self-care and so on. And so they want to get more clarity and relate in new ways to this, for example. Or they feel a lot constrained in their lives in different ways, and they want to feel more free, have more choice or so. We have often, surprisingly often, like successful entrepreneurs who have like maybe already exited their company, and they say like, I want to know who I am really. So what really drives me, what motivates me, like now that I actually have the freedom, what do I really want from life? So it's more like around purpose and like deep values connecting with their core or so, something like this. Yeah, so I mean, all kinds of options. And some people also want to explore it for them, like, do I want to work with this professionally? So we have sometimes coaches coming in or doctors participating, and they want to seek, do I want to offer psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy or psychedelic-assisted medical work or so on. So different intentions depending on the people that come.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a number of sessions to help the person define the intention and to prepare them for what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then once the psychedelic session, where does it take place?
So we have at Evolute, I make it specific, like 3 group prep sessions and then one one-on-one before we even get together on site. And then on site, it happens in a beautiful private retreat center in nature. So no other people running around or so on. So it's the group is among themselves. It's a small group, 8 to 10 people usually. So you can get to know everyone really well already in the preparation phase, and then meet like those people you already know in a way on site. And then it happens in a, like if we are in our main retreat center, we have several, but in the main one in a dedicated building that is very suitable for ceremonies. It will happen on the 2nd day of the retreat there with the participants present and our facilitator team, which is also 4 to 5 people present as well. So before it's more like the content sessions on site, it's a lot about interaction, getting to know the group, also preparing yourself mentally. We have some journaling, of course. We have some body-oriented or mindfulness exercises. And we also teach people about how to navigate the journey itself. So Dimi already mentioned the intention, which can act like a navigating tool in a way, like a compass. But it's also, what do you do when you meet things that you might want to get away from at first, something that makes you feel afraid or so on, right? And so
if you see a devil, for example, suppose you see a devil and it's very scary.
Exactly.
So you help them, you give them some tools on how to manage that during the journey.
How to deal with this, and it's got like how to deal with resistance, inner resistance and acceptance. And there are tools that are kind of more knowing or mental, and then there are others that are more body oriented, for example breathing techniques, and so to relax into something through breath and so on. So different techniques so that you can yourself can and increase the chances that you know how to do. Plus, of course, the attuned support by the facilitators at the right time might be really beneficial. So sometimes a simple touch at the shoulder might remind you that you're here together with a group of people that you feel comfortable with, and then you know that you're not alone in your experience, and then actually this can help move forward. Also, people might not know.
So your team of facilitators is supervising the group that is taking the psilocybin, and identifying when somebody might be in trouble or might be feeling overwhelmed, and intervening to help them get grounded again. Yes,
exactly. And people might also, of course, ask themselves, so they can always raise your hand and we come to you. And we will also check in periodically, also when you don't make any noises or so, we just check in and make sure that you're doing fine. So what people might not know, like people are lying on mattresses with a duvet, on pillows, and they have eye masks. So it's not like that you take it and you run around in nature or so. It's not the kind of trip, right?
You don't run around naked in nature.
No, that's not what we do together. That's more like a festival, recreational use. We do intentional ceremonial use. It's a very different use case. And so the journey goes within, it goes inside, right? When you have the eye mask on, and we have a curated music playlist that guides you and supports you in your journey, which is also very helpful, kind of taking you through different phases of this experience. So Yeah, it's about 4 to 5 hours usually.
Hours, no, 45 what, minutes? 45
4
hours.
to 5 hours.
4
Ah,
to 5
4
hours.
to 5, okay.
Yeah, 4
I just put
45.
45, I'm like, that's too much.
That sounds more like Iboga, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what happens after those 4 to 5 hours?
Well, people slowly come back and they can take their time. There will be snacks and so on. And then there will be like a joint dinner. And then there is some non-verbal way to express your journey. So often we do like an exercise where you can draw your journey, which is really easier for people than maybe to speak about it, right? So you can use the other hemisphere and express it in a painting or something like that. And then this evening concludes already. So then the next 2 days are integration on site. You mentioned the importance of integration, and you mentioned like the group integration sessions, which are virtual. But we think like that the integration time on site, the 2 days are really, really important. And people have told us after, and on the last day, when we do like a last sharing round, that people said like, oh, it wouldn't have been the same thing at all if we hadn't had the 2 days together here to do integration. And this is integration exercises for the mind, but also for the heart, for the body, and of course for the spirit. So I think this is also very important. People sometimes think it's all about the substance, but we really believe it's about what happens around the substance consumption that really impacts how deep the journey can be at all, how well it goes. So and then how sustainable the impact will be. I think that's really it's an art in a way to do this right. I feel, with more and more experiences we have facilitated.
It's interesting because we also have regularly people in our group of participants who have already had numerous psychedelic experiences. And some people have had it in really kind of more party contexts, right? Others have taken it recreationally. But say, I haven't really had the impression that it's a life-changing event, although so many people say, oh, for me, it was totally transformational, or even research shows that for many people, it is one of the most meaningful events in their lives, comparable to the birth of their child or the death of a loved one. And we think the reason for that is psychedelics are meaning-enhancing substances, right? And so the context or the environment in which this journey happens, the intention and how this whole process is facilitated makes a huge difference in what impact it has, and what Christopher mentioned, right? And so we had people who said after their journey with us, it has the depth of the experience is totally different than what he had experienced before when he took it alone or with his friends. And I think it is also because the safer we feel psychologically and emotionally, the more we are willing to really let go of the handrails and fall back into the experience. And if we don't feel totally safe, and if we feel like if there something comes up, and let's say, Pino, your example, if I see the devil, I don't know how to handle it, probably you won't go there in the psychedelic journey. So you will stay more at the surface level and maybe see some funky visions and colors and shapes, but that's about it. But if people have the impression, I know I am safe here and I can dive deeply, then usually they touch places of the spirit, of the heart, that really go deep. And I think that these places, they revolve a lot around about love, about belonging, about presence, about also sorrow and sadness. So basically, what makes us truly human in the end, right?
It's interesting because I'm hearing you say how psychedelics help us open that box that we function within, but you never know how deep that opening is going to be. And that depth has to do with the feeling of safety that you have in the setting. And so that is why you are creating this group, you're bringing them together, you're giving them tools, you're helping them share, so that they feel as safe as possible before they go into the psychedelic journey. And that way, that experience can go into deeper places maybe and bring up deeper, more profound information for the person to work with. Yes, I'm also hearing that the 2 days after the session are very important, not only to make sense of the journey itself, but maybe also to be able to access those deeper interpretations of what you experienced, no? Like sometimes you think you've gone to see a film and you got a meaning of oh, this is a lovely film about, I don't know, trauma and war. And then you talk about it with a friend and you realize that you're reliving something with your relationship with your father when you watch that film. So you come to a deeper understanding of the same film because you're discussing it with other people, yeah? And so you guys are facilitating those conversations to help people get the most profound and most life impact and meaning out of the journey and the psychedelic experience itself. I'd like to open the floor to the group to see if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask. Because it's 7:45, so I want to be respectful of people's calendars and agendas, and we can keep chatting. But please feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions you have to Dmitrij and Christopher about the experiences or anything that you're curious about with psychedelics. Yeah.
And if you're shy, you can also write it in the chat.
Yes, true. But this is a safe space, apart from the fact recording it.
It's true, but the recording, maybe not.
But you can write the text on the chat and you can ask whatever you like. So Dmitrij was talking about sorrow. I'm guessing there is some emotional expression in the on-site seminars. People must let go at times, yeah?
Yes.
Must be very liberating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, many people experience a catharsis, right? Kind of an emotional release that has been building up for a long time. And yeah, I mean, it's also not seldom we see people crying for several hours during their journey because there is a movement that wants to be completed in their journey, and they have the chance there. And I see that Jorge is raising his hand.
Yeah, sure, Jorge, go ahead, please. Unmute your mic first.
We can't hear you, Jorge.
Jorge, can you reactivate your mic?
Okay, I was trying, sorry.
Yeah, now.
How you doing? Look, I think this is quite interesting, but I just have one big doubt. You've been talking about these, I would say, comfort area where you feel safe and whatever, but what happens once you don't have this safety environment and you come back home and you start trying to sleep and your mind is blowing and you don't feel that safeness?
Well, so usually, I mean, as the experience happens in this safe container, people, when they leave on the final day of the retreat, they're really doing well. I mean, it's not that they leave in a way that they would feel unwell, and it's because of the whole packaging in the container and the facilitation, I think. We do have then of course the virtual group sessions and the one-on-ones also following. We also have, I mean, trauma-informed therapists available if someone really wants to go deeper and can work therapeutically on something that has been uncovered. We have our own, I mean, screening process. So we wouldn't accept people usually in the medics and through the medical psychological screening. They're filtered out that would have like a risk of developing a serious condition. So and we also can't accept clinical diagnosed cases like clinically diagnosed depression or other conditions, bipolar disorder. We can't accept people like this. It's not that you couldn't work with psychedelics on them, but we can't do it. So this is more like for a clinical therapeutic setting. So we really focus on the personal development and leadership development part. And so it's part of the screening and the group creation creation and then the experience creation that we had never had a case like this. We have done like a program 6 times, so 6 times 3 months in the past 1.5 years, and we never had a case for someone who got you could say destabilized, if you want to call it this way. Will you have like sometimes when you're in bed and sleeping, maybe memories coming up or so on? Yes, I mean, you might. I mean, this is but also part of the experience, and then you know how to deal with those. I mean, you can just let them appear and then disappear again or so on. So like you would with maybe a dream or half dream or something. And it might actually provide additional insight. So I had personally often very important, interesting additional insights like 3 or 4 days after my psychedelic experiences, when I was more like sleeping, like in bed or so on. So it can actually be beneficial also to have
Does that answer your question, Jorge?
Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with the importance of the group sessions that you guys hold after the psychedelic experience itself. Everybody goes home, everybody goes back to their families, to their jobs, but they still have the ability to connect with the group through the online sessions. And are there any one-on-ones with your coaches or facilitators?
Yeah, there are also one-on-ones. Plus, there is a WhatsApp group then for the whole group to connect, also independently from us, of course, and people talk with each other. And of course, also, when we take people in, we make sure that they do have a support network. I mean, we wouldn't accept someone who doesn't have like a sufficiently stable life right now that they can't like talk to someone after the experience. So you should have like someone at home also, not, or like, I mean, not at home necessarily, but like in your personal network that you can talk to and so on. So those are important things also that people are, let's say, landing softly then, no? I mean, outside of the retreat as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jorge, for your question. Do we have anybody else want to say or ask anything? Ricky would like to talk. Ricky, go ahead. Unmute your mic.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for the talk. And so I organize retreats here in Mexico. They don't include psychedelics as it's not legal here. They include other experiences that cause altered state of consciousness, such as breath work, meditation, ice bath, temazcal, and other sound healing, etc. And right now I'm also taking a course on integration, on how to integrate experiences of altered state of consciousness, psychedelic and non-psychedelic. So because I want to understand better how to integrate the experiences. We've been doing that in the retreat that I've been offering, but I want to go deeper. So in your experience, what has been like the most useful integration practices that you have done that have helped your the people that go to your retreats and your programs?
Mm-hmm. You want to speak or?
Yeah, so it's also part of our integration is actually also using a lot of the tools that you've been talking about. So also in our retreats, we use holotropic breath work. We have a lot of mindfulness, meditation informed exercises. So we see also, for instance, the path of meditation of cultivating a beginner's mind, so to speak, in Zen Buddhism as also a practice of meditation, but integration. But what we encourage people, I think, is to do is twofold. I think on the one hand, what science shows, what is a strong foundation for integration is to construct a values-based vision of what life I want to live, right? So basically, how can I implement or anchor my insights into values, and how can I then bring these values alive? Right, so this is one important aspect which has been shown in different models of psychotherapy to be very effective, even without psychedelics. So this is what we focus on integration phase. What values do you want to bring alive? And then on the other hand, I think we try to help people find certain practices, rituals of integration that are personally meaningful for them. So for some, for instance, it is, I want to connect more often to nature, or taking walks in nature, or even maybe sleeping outside outdoors somewhere in my garden or in the forest, because it reminds me of how interconnected we are with the web of life, or whatever your journey showed you. For other people, it might be, I want to regularly take time to contemplate and to meditate. For some others, it is really listening to certain music that is evocative. So I think it is kind of a patchwork of different practices, how we frame it. And Chris, I'm sure you have also something to add here.
Yeah, and so we use also the one-on-ones to help people individually to kind of come up with their own integration practices, and also, of course, help them make sense of the experience still, which is part of the integration. The relating that happens in the group also afterwards, I think is really helpful, how people exchange. We also invite them to journal, of course. Some have also written like experience reports, which also help solidify kind of the experience and kind of have something to relate to. Like when people are more connected to their bodies afterwards, anything that's body oriented might help, right? Expressive movement practices, somatic work, body work, or so on. So it's a bit like you can offer like a whole set of practices, and people might connect to some more and to some less, and they can choose theirs.
Yeah, I think, Ricky, your question is, like we would say in Spanish, integration es la madre del cordero. It's really the key aspect. Everybody walks their own unique integration path of these experiences and others, right? And so as facilitators and coaches, we provide all the tools we have. We stay there and make ourselves available. But then each person really has to walk their path. And I think that's the difficulty we have in our society, is that we have very low tolerance for grief and vulnerability. And so we get very worried when we don't feel strong and well. But not feeling strong and well is integrating the information that you got in the psychedelic journey, no? So sometimes just learning, just telling your client that it's okay to be crying is fine. I tell them, when you're crying, you're improving your leadership. You're doing exactly what I need you to be doing, yeah? Sometimes that's all they need to just self-regulate and take it slowly and not feel helpless with emotion. I think that's what we want to avoid, is for a client to feel helpless with the emotion that they're experiencing. And that's where we would intervene, or if we can't help them, direct them to a more clinical or maybe even a medicated professional help if that is needed, because that can happen, no? Mm-hmm. Did we reply to your question, Enrique?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you. We have time for one last question, 2 last minutes before everybody starts dropping out.
Ana Maria.
Great, Ana Maria, go ahead. And if anybody needs to drop out, just feel free to just trickle out. That's fine. As we're recording the session, you can watch the end of it at your own pace. Ana Maria, go ahead.
You're still muted though, Ana Maria.
Yeah, put your now.
Buenas tardes. Soy Ana María de Perú. Mi inglés es un poco básico.
That's okay, Ana María. Di la pregunta en español y yo la traduzco al inglés.
Yo he pasado no hace poco por la experiencia de la ayahuasca y ha sido bastante transformadora en plena selva.
Okay, let me translate. Ana María just went through, voy a traducir. Ana María just went through an ayahuasca experience in the jungle and it was very transformative. Sigue.
Y quería preguntarles qué tanto ellos, los especialistas, siguen un tanto el recorrido de las plantas en ese viaje interior, porque la planta entra en nuestro interior y es ahí donde hace esa transformación. Quería saber qué tanto es lo que ellos han podido conocer o leer o experimentar sobre esa interiorización que hace la planta y esa transformación que hace al ingresar en nosotros, porque el espíritu de la planta es el que entra en nosotros para llevar a cabo esa sanación o esa transformación.
Okay, so Ana Maria is asking, to what extent have you researched like the spirit of the plant that enters you? I know that this is important in the ayahuasca ceremonies. She's asking about how the effect or the spirit of each plant that intervenes in the beverage they prepare in ayahuasca, how that enters the body and works in the experience of the client. Can you speak to that from the use of psilocybin?
So it's a very interesting question, because the practice of consuming psychedelics for the biggest part of human history has been very closely linked to a spiritual practice, right? It wasn't something that people would kind of take recreationally, but it was part or embedded in a deeper cultural context, and usually these were traditional nations and indigenous folks that have been keeping up this practice, right? So rightfully so, in the Amazonian basin, the Shipibo tribes, similar tribes have been coming up with their understanding and worldviews about these substances. So what kind of approach do we use? For us, we do not try to replicate the shamanic tradition here, because we feel it is not directly applicable to how our social life is organized here. So for instance, what I try to say is that having an experience in the Amazon with traditional shamans is one experience that might be completely different from having an experience here, because the framing is different, right? So we don't know what kind of spirit talks to you, what certain plant spirits tell you. We are more, we give more the liberty to the person experiencing to interpret and make sense and take responsibility for the experience. So we don't tell you this is this spirit talking to you and this is that and this is what it means. We try to support people taking most meaning out of it for them. And why we do so, I think on the one hand, it is out of respect for the traditional wisdom, because we are not traditional shamans, so we don't want to replicate something that we would kind of borrow artificially, right? So we respect that. And we have we're leaning into science, how science informs us, but we also open for wisdom traditions that are non-scientific, but where we see a convergence. And so we try to be neutral. Of course, we're never neutral in that sense, but we just don't speak about, well, this is the certain spirit. So Ana Maria, did it make sense?
Ana María, ¿qué tal la respuesta? ¿Tiene sentido para ti?
Gracias.
Gracias. Okay, guys, it's 3 minutes past 8. I think we're going to stop here to allow everybody to integrate and take away their ideas. Thank you very much to Christopher and Dmitrij for sharing their knowledge and life journeys and experience with psychedelics. And thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you to everybody who asked questions and participated. I hope we were able to answer your question, Fran, but we can discuss later for sure. And if anybody wants to be connected with Christopher and Dmitrij, they're available on LinkedIn. They're easy to reach. You can ask them questions directly. I will post the recording. We'll post the recording. We'll discuss how to make that recording public so you can share with anybody who might be interested in these topics. And there you have the evoluteinstitute.com. So you are there, you can reach them there if you want to inquire more information about their programs. And that's all for today, folks. Thank you for coming. Buenas noches a todos. And good journey to everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good evening or good day.
Thank you.